Welcome back. We are live again, and I welcome you to this HYPERVSN Wide Wall webinar. And we are about to start the webinar. My name is Slava. I'm from support department, and thanks for your feedback regarding the sound and video quality. But I appreciate if you can give me more feedbacks, as I have only one feedback from one person. But still, I hope that you can hear me well and see the slides on the presentation. So the topic of the webinar is HYPERVSN Wide Wall, all you need to know. Most likely you will have questions during the webinar, so please type them in the chat box, and at the end of the webinar I will try to reply to all of them. Let's begin. I guess many of you are already familiar with the product called HYPERVSN Wall. For those who don't know, let me just give a brief explanation. HYPERVSN Wall is the combination of several solar units. You can combine single units in different layouts. It can consist of different number of the units. So this is what HYPERVSN Wall. It produces bigger holographic image. But then for those who know about HYPERVSN wireless wall, probably haven't ever heard about wired wall. So this is what we're gonna discuss here today. And let me tell you first of all the intention of wired wall. Wired wall, as you know, wireless wall has a great dependency from Wi-Fi network, and it happens during the events that there is congested Wi-Fi channel, or so it means when there are many Wi-Fi networks in the event, show, or exhibition hall, and you lose the synchronization of the devices. So with the wired HYPERVSN Wall, you will achieve stability in the operation of and the playback of the media files. Moreover, with wired HYPERVSN Wall, it's easier to, it's more reliable to build interaction, and also do simple operations such as switching between the playlists and pausing the playback and stopping the playback. So with the wired units, it gives more stability and reliability. So on this slide, you can see the example of HYPERVSN Wall. This is the example of 4x3 HYPERVSN Wall, totally 12 units. You can use as many units as you want. It can be custom layouts. So let's move on. This webinar will consist of several parts. The first part will be, as you can see, it's just overview on the product. Then we discuss some requirements, technical requirements, installation requirements, and the very important part about the installation steps, what you will need to do in order to build your HYPERVSN wired wall. Then we discussed the troubleshooting. So you will see. Let's move on. Installation requirements. So when talking about installation requirements, the biggest attention should be paid to the safety provisions. On the slide, you can see the HYPERVSN Wall, which is installed on big height. So when you install your wall, let's say minimum 3 meters from the floor, it means it won't be almost reachable for the public. So you need to make it inaccessible for the audience. It's really important during the events. You can't watch all the people not to touch the wall. So it's better to install the wall on a height. Thus, you will avoid the public interference with it. Apart from this slide is also interesting in regard to the kind of interaction of the HYPERVSN wall. HYPERVSN wall is hardly visible on the slide, but you can see Renault logo. This is where the units installed. And then the backing wall and the background of the wall is quite interesting because it's not just a pure dark background, or it's not just some simple pattern of the background. It has the image of the Earth and then the theme of Star Wars. So it's always it's a good idea to integrate the HYPERVSN wall into the display with some of the scenarios, like here, like Star Wars, or you can, if you're representing the fashion products, then you can integrate HYPERVSN wall into the display where there will be like bags and shoes, and so a scenario, not just a HYPERVSN wall, but together with stuff like this. Speaking about other safety provisions. First way to protect your wall from the public is to install it on height. The other way is to protect it with the barriers. It can be safety stanchions, or you can put just a little fence just to give the limitation and from the audience and your wall. Also, you can put the notification on the paper. You can print it out saying that no, don't touch it, and as many languages you use in your phrase, don't touch it, it would be better. Why I am so why I pay much attention to the safety? Because during the events, as I said, you forget about, you think you might watch everybody not to touch the wall, but actually during the events you forget about the people and they might get in there. So it's really important to provide safety of the wall. Then there are requirements for the physical structure, for the backing wall. As you know, the HYPERVSN units, which are the part of the HYPERVSN wall, should be installed on some physical structure. So the physical structure should be also follow some requirements. You can see them on the slide. So the most important are that the surface should be leveled. It should not be chattering. It should be quite firm. As you know, when the device is working, it provides a little shaking due to its form factor, because the rotor is spinning on 770 rotations per minute. So imagine if all 20 units are working together, they give a quite huge influence on the physical structure. So make sure your structure is stable, firm, and made of inflexible material. Apart from that, you should keep in mind the weight of the device. The weight of one device is 4.2 kilograms, and the physical structure, of course, should be the weight of physical structure should be more than the total number of the units. Otherwise, if it is light material of the physical structure, then you have to fix it from different sides to provide its stability. So also on this slide, I want to pay your attention to this kind of structure. As you can see, the wall of 9 is used on the steel structure. It's not just a solid wall, but this kind of structure. And this kind of structure provides better floating in the air effect. It provides semi-transparent background, which is really nice. Now, by this structure, you can increase holographic effect. Other recommendations on how you can increase the holographic effect mentioned on this slide. So you can install your HYPERVSN wall in the way that the top row of the devices exceeding the border of the backing wall of the physical structure. Not only the top row, you can do it on the sides as well, left and right, and even on the bottom. So if the devices are exceeding the borders of the physical structure from all the sides, this holographic effect will be enhanced rather than using the backing wall on the covering the whole HYPERVSN wall. Regarding the background again, as I told you, semi-transparent background is really nice, but you have to be careful about what is behind your structure. If there are bright sources of light, they might decrease the brightness. If there is no chance, you can use a semi-transparent background like here, like on this structure. Then make sure that your solid wall is not black. Black background will decrease the holographic effect. You might think that black background will increase the brightness, but actually no. It will decrease the holographic effect, and you can use dark colors, which are better than black. Dark colors, for example, let it be dark blue. It won't decrease the brightness, and moreover, it won't decrease the holographic effect. So don't use black background. The image will be more looking like two-dimensional. Yeah, as you can see on the slide below, pay attention to the image. There are wires coming from the devices, so these are power cords. To make your installation neat and nice, it's better to hide the power cord. So you will need to cut the hole in your physical structure and put the cable through. But we will have a look at it a little bit later when it comes for the cutting the holes in the physical structure. So let's move on. Up to now, I'm just giving you a kind of overview, not detailed information. We will soon start speaking about step-by-step process of a wide wall installation. But now it's more like a preparation and understanding of what you need and what you need to follow in order to construct your HYPERVSN wall. So now technical installation requirements. Here we're going to speak about the electrical parameters. It is important to understand that MS units, by the way, the HYPERVSN device, there are different models, right? So wide wall can only be built with MS units. Now we have previous units are DT, D and C models, and MS units are used as wired units for HYPERVSN wide wall. So MS units consumption for power is more than in comparison to DT and D models and moreover C models, and the current is also higher, almost twice. So you should keep these figures in mind, because when there is not enough electricity on your stand or in the event place, the units won't work properly. They might black out, they might shut down. So just keep in mind these parameters for devices. And of course, apart from devices, when you build HYPERVSN wide wall, you need to add the consumption of the master box, the sound speakers, if you're going to use them, and the laptop. So it also has to be added to the quantity of power consumption and current, but of course not in such a high amount as in comparison to the HYPERVSN MS devices. So these are electrical parameters. And now let's move on to some parameters for Wi-Fi network. You might say that this is a wired wall, so why do I need Wi-Fi network? Wi-Fi network will be needed even if you have a HYPERVSN wired wall. Wi-Fi network will be needed for the units activation and for Masterbox activation. And also you will need to have access to the internet on your computer if you're going to use wall application during the operation hours. So just speaking in a few words, we will need Wi-Fi for Wi-Fi with access to the internet for devices activation, and just Wi-Fi without the access to the internet for uploading the content to the devices. As for the Masterbox, Masterbox peculiarity is that it can't connect to other Wi-Fi networks. Like the HYPERVSN devices, you access the calibration page, you put the Wi-Fi network in its memory, you save it, and then the HYPERVSN device will try to connect to wireless network, to Wi-Fi network. Masterbox can't do it. So the only way to activate Masterbox is to connect the Masterbox to the router with a LAN cable, RJ45. This is the only way to activate the Masterbox. But we will have a look at it on further slides. On this slide, I just want to point your attention to the fact that Wi-Fi network will be needed, and even you will need access to the internet at some point of time. And your Wi-Fi network should be aligned with the mentioned on the screenshot parameters, like the 2.4 gigahertz and BG mode. So these are the most important. So the other, yeah. Let's move on to the next slide. And sometimes you have in mind an interesting project for the structure, for the physical structure. So you don't want to use the HYPERVSN wall on just a simple plywood board. For example, you want to construct the glass structure and it is closed. So keep in mind that when you are using the devices in closed structure, enclosures, like a glass cube or glass sphere or dome, you need to drill the holes for the ventilation. If you don't have holes in the structure, then the units will be overheated and might burn. Then when you want to put the devices on glass surface, so you should remember about how glass fragile is. And in order to, as you know, the devices are shaking during the operation, it's better to use some kind of dampers to avoid the cracking of the glass, like mentioned on the slide. Also, there is some aesthetic parameter requirement, let's say. When you are using glass surface, then you have a fully transparent background, right? So in this case, make sure there are no bright sources of light behind the HYPERVSN wall, because it will decrease the brightness of your image. And also, don't use reflective glass. Use it as non-reflective in case you want to put the glass in front of the devices in order to protect it from the public. HYPERVSN wall components. When speaking about HYPERVSN wired wall, we may divide the components into three parts. So the first part would be the components which are supplied from HYPERVSN company. These components you can see on the slide. These are hardware components, and they consist of HYPERVSN devices. Please remember that you can, for the wired wall, you can use only HYPERVSN devices of MS model. And then it comes for the special alignment mounts. Alignment mounts can be of two types, long and short. As you know, while constructing the HYPERVSN wall, you need to follow the sequence of long and short mounts. HYPERVSN wall devices in HYPERVSN wall installed in overlapping manner. So when the rays are overlapping each other. So in order to achieve this overlapping manner installation, you need to use long and short mounts. You might say that why do I need to use alignment mounts if I can just put on wooden boards, thick board and thin board? Yes, with the boards you will achieve the overlapping manner, but you won't be able to make mechanical calibration. What is here is really important. With alignment mounts, you can do mechanical calibration easily in case in case there is not enough clearance between the rays in your wall. We will talk about it a little bit later when it comes for the description of the mount. Then the third component is the Masterbox. Masterbox is the computer which gives the proper signal for the synchronization. Masterbox also can be used for the sound synchronization with the devices. You can connect up to 50 devices to one Masterbox. You can. This is the optimal. This is the optimal quantity of the devices. If technically you can use more devices, but the optimal operation is achieved when there are only 50 devices for one Masterbox. Then it comes for the software parts, software components. As for the software components, we have Wall Builder subscription. This is the subscription which provides synchronization in HYPERVSN wall. So each Wall Builder subscription should be assigned to one device. If you have 20 devices, it means that you will need to have 20 Wall Builder subscriptions. Wall Builder subscription doesn't have expiry date, so once you assign it to the device, you can you don't need to extend the subscription or whatever. So the assignment of the subscription is done through the platform.kinoma.com. When you log into your account, you can do it easily from there when the unit is activated. Then it comes for the application. Application is used for the management and the construction of HYPERVSN wall. It's quite user-friendly application. Moreover, we have a recent release of the application, which this recent release is more stable, and the interface changed a little bit to be way more friendly. So these are the software parts of the HYPERVSN wall. Then the third part, which is called like accessories, doesn't belong to HYPERVSN technology. These parts, these accessories, can be easily obtained by you from the local store, or you might already have it in your garage. So this on the slide, I'm not gonna mention all you can see on this slide. Just let me tell you about, for example, line filter. Line filter mentioned here without on-off button, but actually it's better to use the line or extension ports with on-off button. And also, when you are constructing your HYPERVSN wall, don't try to put all your devices in one line filter. Try to distribute it. For example, if you have 20 devices, don't make it like 2 line filters, 10 in one line filter and 10 in the other line filter. Try to make it like 5 devices in one line filter. So it's going to be 4 extension ports for line filters. Then you can see the picture of the bolt. The size of the bolt is M8. X3N means 3 bolts for fixing 1 mount. And there is also mentioned a nut. These bolts, as I said, they are used for the fixing the mount on the physical structure, the alignment mount on the physical structure. But exactly this kind of bolt, type of bolts are used when you have access to your backing wall, when you can go behind the wall and fix the bolt with a nut. If you don't have access to the back of the wall, you need to have the M8 screws. So it depends on the material of your wall, and also depends on the accessibility to the back side of the wall, which type of the bolt to choose. Here, the bolt which you can use on the wall with access to the back side. Let me mention again, with this kind of bolts, we fixing the alignment mounts on the wall. 3 pieces for 1 mount. So then it comes for the drill, and the drill bit, of course, should be accordingly of size 8, but it's better to use 8.3 millimeters size diameter of the drill bit, because if you use 8 millimeters, then the size of the bolt is 8 millimeters and the drill bit is 8 millimeters, so it will be difficult to put the bolt inside. You will have to use hammer probably, so it's better to use a little bit thicker drill bit. Then you will need a laptop. A laptop should be operated by Windows 10, because the wall application can be used only on Windows 10 operation systems at the moment. Also, there is one more component which is not mentioned here, and it is router. Router can be of any brand, but we recommend to use Microtic router because it's easy to configure. You can configure its Wi-Fi signal. You can increase the Wi-Fi signal. You can launch NTP server on it. You can do other configurations. And but as I said, you can use any other brand. And also here it is not mentioned the LAN cables, because with the LAN cables we connect the laptop to the router, and the second LAN cable is used to connect Masterbox to the router. So let's say 3 components, 2 components are missing here: router and 2 LAN cables. Let's move on. This is how generally the HYPERVSN wide wall look like. Laptop on the left part, then you can see router with Wi-Fi signal. The router is connected to the Masterbox with the LAN cable, and 4 devices which are interconnected between each other with the cable as well, with RJ14 cable. This cable, why this wall is called wide wall? Because thanks to these wires, which are interconnecting the devices between each other. When you order a mesh device from HYPERVSN company, in the box you will have router, starter, and you will have remote control, of course, and you will have small white wire, which is called RJ14. This is the connection type RJ14, and so the wire comes together with the device, MS device. With the help of this wire, you will need to connect the devices between each other, and then you will need to connect the last device or the first device in your wall to the Masterbox. So it will be like a complete network for transmitting the signal from Masterbox to devices. Also on this slide, you can see the mounts behind the devices. You can see small holes which are used for connecting the mount to the wall, and you can see bigger holes. So the bigger holes are used to put the cable, power cable through, so it's not visible to the audience. Yeah, and there is also one more option is possible, and the other option is better. So you need to connect the LAN cable from router to your laptop, so the connection will be more stable. But this option, which you can see on the slide, is also possible. So just to, because you know, when you connect something with a wire, it is stronger than in comparison to Wi-Fi. In this case, on the slide, the laptop is connected to the router through Wi-Fi, which is not really stable. But when you connect it with the wire, then there is no interference from the outer world, from Wi-Fi networks. So it's better to connect the laptop to the router with the LAN cable. Now let's move on. Basic assembly steps. Now I will try to give step-by-step process description on how you can install your HYPERVSN wired wall. Try to use your imagination. Just imagine you are doing it with me now. You are constructing your HYPERVSN wall. So let's start. First of all, you will need something where you can put your devices. So it comes for the physical structure. Backing wall, the wall, the physical wall, where you need to put the mounts together with the devices. So it's really important to observe the distance between the devices. The distance between devices should be, between centers, should be 403 millimeters. Also, you will need to cut the holes precisely, so you will attach the mount to the wall. In order to, of course, you can get from us all the distances between the small holes. We will give it to you. You can measure it with the ruler and do the marking and cut the holes. But actually, for marking the holes on your physical wall, we have a special stencil. You can pay attention to the bottom of the slide. You can see two sets of 3 holes. It means that 2 mounts can be installed. But the stencil, one file consists of 4 sets. So it's like a square with the marking of for 4 mounts. So it means 4 sets of 3 holes. So we send it in soft format by email. You can receive it from your account manager, or you can receive it from support team. You will just need to print it in A1 format without changing the scales, the margins. Just print it in A1 format. You can even make it from different material. You can print it in paper, or you can make it as a hard stencil from wood, for example. Then what you need to do, you will, after printing, you apply the stencil to your physical structure and mark the positioning of the holes. So this is more convenient than using the ruler and marking it yourself. Once you apply the stencil and mark the positioning of the holes, you take away the stencil and drill the holes. But before drilling, make sure that the distance is correct. It should be 403 millimeters between the devices. So this is a very important figure which you need to remember, keep in mind. So let's drill the holes. We have 10 devices, 5 by 2 layout. We do the operation like this. First, we apply the stencil to the positioning of first 4 sets. Then we move the stencil to another position and do so on and so forth. Then drill the holes. The bigger holes are used, as I said, for the cabling. The devices are supplied with different types of plugs. It depends on your region. For US, we have, for America, we have American type of plug. For Europe, there is different, and so on and so forth. So the biggest hole should be done for UK plug, and the smallest for US plug. And yeah. Now we have the holes. What to do next? On this slide, you can see just don't regard it as a step. It's just the list of what will be needed for the construction of HYPERVSN Wall, like a summary checklist. Okay, I have this checkbox, and confirm it with the presence of the equipment which you have and software. So let's forget about this slide for a while and move to the next slide here. When we have drilled the holes, we need to, let me show you, yeah. We need, the second stage would be to attach the mounts to your physical structure. On this slide, you can see on the right part, you can see the alignment mount, and on the left side of the slide, it's just a simple ordinary wall bracket. Wall bracket is supplied together with the box when you order a HYPERVSN unit, and you can see at the bottom of the starter, you will see the back plate. This back plate, I'm talking about the left part of the slide. This back plate, as I said, it can be used only on simple wall bracket. When you are using not a wall, but HYPERVSN single unit, solo unit. But when it comes for the wall, you will need to use the mounts, which is mentioned on the right part of the slide. This mount, there are two types of mounts, short and long, and the mount itself consists of two parts. The plate, or I call it a ring because it looks like a ring. It's for me, it's more easier to call it a ring. Then it comes for the mount itself. So it's a plate, O-ring, and mount. So the second stage of our construction of HYPERVSN wide wall would be to attach the mounts without the plate, remove the plate. You need to unscrew the left and right bolts and take away the plate, because we will need to use it on the device. But now let's concentrate on the fixing of the mounts. So the mounts are attached to the wall with 3 M8 bolts. You can see on the image 3 holes where you will need to use M8 bolts. Let me remind you again, the bolts are not supplied with as the part of HYPERVSN wall, so you will need to buy it locally. And depending on the type of the bolt, depends on the type and the material of your physical structure, of the physical wall. So just put inside the bolts and nuts behind the wall, fix it, and thus you will attach the mount. But here it is important to observe the sequence. There are 2 types of mounts, right? So you will, if you're, the sequence means when you put, when you install, for example, first mount is long, then the second mount should be short. The third mount should be long. This is what we call sequence in regard to mounts installation. The devices, it's important to understand that the devices need to be in different planes. The neighboring devices needs to be different planes. If, for example, one device on long mount then the device on the right and the device on the left should be on short mounts. The device which is below should be on a short mount. The device which is which comes in diagonal, it should be in the same plane. We will have a look at the layout a little bit later. So this is our second stage, installation of alignment mounts. The second stage would be, let me get back to the previous slide, not this one. So we fixed the mounts. Now let's assemble the device. When you get the device, when you take the device from the box, it consists of two parts, right? It's a rotor and starter. So first thing we need to do, we need to attach a rotor to a starter. I'm not going to describe you in details the process of rotor to starter installation because it's just a basic procedure which comes from the beginning of HYPERVSN technology. But I want to give you here a piece of advice. So before attaching, because I do it during the events and I think it's more convenient for me, for example, maybe you'll find it convenient for you as well. So before attaching the rotor to the starter, we will need to attach, let me get back to this slide again, this ring or plate from the alignment mount instead of the back plate of the starter. So on the left side, you can see how the back plate can be removed, and then we attach the plate instead of the or ring instead of the back plate. The alignment plate is fixed with 4 screws, which you can see on the left side of the slide. So just make sure that the position of the holes on the ring matching the positions of the holes on the bottom of the stand. So the correct attachment of the ring should be as follows. There is a power cord or coming from the bottom of the starter, right? So you need to attach the ring in the way that 2 threading inserts are on the left and on the right. On the ring, there will be 2 inserts which have thread inside. So this threading insert should be on the left and on the right, not on the top and on the bottom, but on the left and on the right, with a reference to the power cable. So once the ring is attached, we can start the installation of rotor to starter. We have first step, physical wall, cutting the holes, first step. Second step, fixing the mounts. Third step, fixing the ring to the starter. The fourth step, fixing the rotor to the starter. Before we proceed to the next step, let me tell you some information about how to check the device before usage. Make sure that the rays on the rotor are not bent and there are no dead pixels on the rotor. So if the ray is quite curved, you can counterbend it because the ray is made of flexible material. So if you counterbend it and keep it in this position, the ray will become straighter. But if you notice that the ray is really curved, so you might remove it from the rotor, cover it in soft material, put it on this flat surface, for example, table, and put something, for example, a book on it. So under the pressure, the ray will become straighter, and after some time, you will take it from the table, and it will be straighter. But if you damage the ray during such operations, please note this is going to be non-warranty condition. Also check once the rotor attached to a starter, please check if there is no backlash or movement between the rotor and starter. Rotor should be fixed to starter firmly. There shouldn't be any movement. I mean vertical movement. There should be like rotation, free rotation, no friction between rotor and starter. But when you try your devices to lift to a rotor, there shouldn't be like play between them. So now we check the devices. Then what to do next? Okay, now it's time to, as I said, together with the device, you will get small wires. The length of the wire 1.5 meters. These wires are signal wires. So before installing the device to the mount on the wall, you will need to plug in this small wire. This is important to remember. This is actually because you might forget to plug in the cable, and if you install the device on the mount, then there will be no access to the bottom of the starter. So it's better, it's necessary to plug in the small white wire to the bottom of the starter. There are two ports at the bottom of the starter, RJ14 ports. So you will need to plug in these white cables inside. If we are talking about the first device, then in the first device in your wall, you should plug into the first port. You need to plug in the terminator or resistor, and in the second port you need to plug in the cable. Yes, there is one more thing when constructing the HYPERVSN wide wall, and it is a terminator or resistor. A resistor is needed to close your signal network in the HYPERVSN wall. So the terminator is something which comes from the HYPERVSN company. So you don't have to think where to get it. It's a small piece of wire, and it's black on the cap, and on the other end it has RJ14 cap. So before installing the devices, make sure to put the cable inside, RJ14 cable. And once it's done, then you can fix the device on the mount. Remember about left and right threaded inserts on the rim. So now with M6 bolts you will get bolts with alignment mounts. So don't worry, there will be 4 bolts together with the alignment mounts. Left and right bolts are shorter than the top and the bottom bolts. So you will need to fix the left and the right bolts. Let me open the picture of the mount so you understand better. Left and right bolts are used to fix the device on the mount. So these bolts are holding the device. The device won't fall down if 2 bolts are fixed. Then when the device is fixed, pay attention to the bottom screw on the mount. The bottom screw is used for the mechanical calibration of the device. With the help of this bottom screw, you change the positioning of the device. You change its angle. Because when you are building the HYPERVSN wall, as I said, it should be done in overlapping manner. It means that the rays are overlapping each other. So, for example, my hands are raised, and for example, you want to change the position of one device, and the rays the clearance become closer, or with the help of the bottom screw, you can change the position in opposite direction. So this is why we call it alignment mounts, because with the help of the bottom screw, you can change the position of the device up to your construction. And then top screw is used to lock the device. You will notice when the top screw is not screwed in, the device will be freely moving on the mount, but when the top screw is screwed in, then the device will be fixed. So this bolt is called locking bolt. Let me repeat again. Left and right screw or left and right bolt is used to fix the device on the mount. The bottom screw is used to do the calibration, and the top screw is used to lock the device on the mount. So what we've done, we've already fixed the device on the wall, and it should look like this here at the bottom picture. For fixing the bolts on the mount, you will need a 5mm Allen key or hex key. Let me show you the slide with the tools. Here, it's hexagon 4.0, 5.0mm. Why two sizes I mentioned? The two sizes I mentioned because some time ago we had a different version of alignment mounts. So this alignment mount required 4mm hexagon, but the newest version of mounts require 5mm hexagon tool. So the devices are hanging on the wall, they are connected between each other. Now let's talk about the connection. Let me open this slide. So remember about terminator, which you need to put inside of one port on the first device, and the second port you need to use the wire, RJ14 wire, the white wire. So one end of RJ14 wire you will need to put in the second port, and the other part of the wire you will need to put inside of the second device in your wall. So thus you will have connection between one device and the second device. Then it depends on the number of units in your wall. You can do it. You need to connect the third device, the fourth device, and then when it comes for the last device, the second port or the first port, whatever, needs to be connected with the master box with the same wire. So we will have finally one network. You can connect the devices like this. You can connect the first device to the second device, or you can connect the first device to the device which is at the bottom. And yeah, like this. It's up to you. You can do it like a labyrinth, or you can do it then sequentially, first, second, third, like this. Guys, I'm sorry if I forget to mention something, but anyway, all the information about the construction of HYPERVSN wall can be found in the manual. Because we have a limitation in time for this webinar, so please make sure to read the manual and to check the details on the connection and other stuff. It's really useful. So finally, for example, yes, now we install the devices, we connected them together with the master box and between each other. Finally, the front view of the devices will be like this, like mentioned on the slide. Here, let me explain you about the sequence again. The gray area for the first device indicates that the device is on the long mount, the second device is on a short mount, and you can observe the sequence, right? So the first device long, second short, third long, the fourth short again, and so on and so forth. Thus, we will achieve overlapping installation manner. So this is it for installation. Not quite. Then we need to calibrate, right? With the alignment mounts, you need to use the bottom screw in order to calibrate the devices. So here on this slide actually is really important. It says about the distances between the rays. So on the picture, which is on the left part, you can see the distance between the tips of the rays. It means that the device is in the same place. For example, let me get back to this previous slide. The distance between the device number 1 and the device number 5 between the tips of the rays should be 2.4 millimeters. But the distance between the rays of the devices which are in different planes, for example, device number 1 and device number 2, the distance between the rays should be 10 millimeters minimum. If the distance is less, then it's not safe to start the wall. It's not safe for the rays. The rays might get in touch with each other and then be damaged. So make sure that the distance is kept at minimum 10 millimeters. And in order to achieve these distances, you will need to use the bottom screw. Let me get back to the slide. So this bottom screw on the alignment mount, right? When you think that you finished with the calibration, mechanical calibration, make sure to spin all the devices with your hands. Thus you will check if the clearance is enough, whether the rays are not touching each other, and you can proceed with further steps. So now the first step will be to activate the Masterbox and HYPERVSN devices. But before we activate the Masterbox and the devices, of course we need to give them power. So it's clear how you can give the power to the Masterbox. You just need to plug it in, right? So it will be powered, it will have electricity. But don't forget to connect Masterbox to the router with Ethernet cable, and the router should have internet access at this point of time, because you need to activate the Masterbox, and the Masterbox should go to the cloud, to the platform, to the internet. So in order to get the authorization key. So we powered on the Masterbox. It is connected. Now let's activate it. There is a switch for the hotspot. When it's on, you will see the network, Wi-Fi network, which is generated by the Masterbox. It's this feature is also this feature also is the HYPERVSN devices have also this kind of feature, right? Because the device, the HYPERVSN device has a switch. When you put it in setup mode, the device starts generating its hotspot. So the same is Masterbox, but there is a big difference between the HYPERVSN devices and the Masterbox. The Masterbox, it can generate its hotspot, its Wi-Fi, but it cannot connect to the other Wi-Fi network. You can connect to other network, you can connect it only with the Ethernet cable. So let's proceed. We put the switch of hotspots into the on position, and you will notice in the list of the networks on your computer, the network for the Masterbox. It will be HW and the serial number of the Masterbox. So in order to connect to the Masterbox, you will need to put password for the Wi-Fi network. The password is the same as for the devices. It's 0338 and so on and so forth. You can find everything in the manual, so I'm not gonna tell you like very detailed way. Once you're connected, just go to your browser and type IP192. You see, the process is quite familiar, similar to the HYPERVSN devices activation. When you type this IP address in your browser and press enter, you will be the calibration page of Masterbox will be opened. So let's activate it now. You see the web interface of the Masterbox. Just go to Setup tab, press Activation. Put your user email. User email, the one which you are using to log in to platform.kinoma.com. So just use the same email in order to activate Masterbox. Then press Activate Masterbox, and the Masterbox will go to the internet through the router. And remember, it can only access the router through the cable. It cannot connect to Wi-Fi networks. That's why you don't see any field here for indicating Wi-Fi network. For the activation of Masterbox, you just need to put your email and press Activate Masterbox button. And if the Masterbox is connected to the router which has internet, you will have successful activation. The successful activation indicated on info field, info tab, Once you go there, you will see in the first line like status OK for the activation and the email which the activation was assigned to. So thanks God we activated the master box, and now let's activate the devices. We need to turn on the devices, right? First we need to turn it on. You can turn on the devices in the following way. Go back to web interface of the master box, go to devices tab. You can see on the top bar, you can see devices tab. Then click on devices tab, and nevertheless, the devices are not activated. If they are connected with the wire in a correct way, I'm talking about the small white wire, which is RJ14. If they are connected between each other and connected to the master box, in the devices tab, you will see turn on and off button. So when you press on buttons, the devices will start spinning. Right, so this is the way you can turn it on. Also, there is a way you can turn on the devices with a remote controller, right? And the third way, you can turn on the devices when they powered up. When you put the power to the devices, they will start spinning, but you have to switch the mode. Remember about the starter, there is a little hole where you can switch the mode into remote control mode and to the plug mode. But you can find all this information in the manual. I'm not going to speak about it any further. So, but here, I want to describe you how you can turn on the devices. Yeah, here on this slide, you can see this device tab is selected, but for powering the devices on, you can see controls button just a little bit to the left upper corner. And when you go to controls tab, you will see there power on, off, and diagnostic on, off. So you need to power it on, and if the devices are correctly connected, they will start spinning. When the devices are spinning, it's time to activate them. So go again to devices tab, but now not to controls, to networks, and add network preset. So you can, by this step, you will put the Wi-Fi network to the devices. They will keep it in their memory. Here on the right, on the slide, on the right part of the slide, you can see the message box where you can put Wi-Fi network name and password name. So once you put this Wi-Fi credentials, press add network and then press synchronize on the left side of the slide. Synchronize, once you press synchronize button, Masterbox will send the command through the wire to the devices saying, this is now your network, try to connect to it when I will try to activate you. So by doing this step, you are saving the Wi-Fi network to all the devices. And now when the devices know which network to connect, let's activate them. So pay attention to the slide. We go back to Masterbox web interface and devices tab, and you can see, remember about the power on off button, you can see them here, right? On the screenshot. On off, screen on and off means to turn on the diagnostic screen. Update firmware, we will talk about it a little bit later, and activate all. So here now we need to press button activate all. Once you press activate all, the devices will start searching for this Wi-Fi network. And if your router is running properly, and if the Wi-Fi network of the router is 2.4 gigahertz and BG mode and has internet, the devices will connect to the router and get all the necessary activation keys in order to be activated. So this is how you do through the web interface of the Masterbox. Easy, right? If you have 10 devices, you can activate 10 of all of them by just clicking one button. Remember, before having this function, how did you activate the device? You need to activate it one by one, switching into setup mode, putting the accessing calibration page, and then activating. But now with the Masterbox, you can activate all the devices, but be careful. If you have, for example, 20 devices, it's better to activate them by batches. Don't try to activate all of them, all 20 of them, because they will try, all of them will rush to the router, all 20 will rush to the router and provide huge influence on it. So try to do it by batches. For example, if you have 20, try to make it like 10 and 10, or 4 batches by 5, like this. Okay. Now Masterbox activated, devices are activated. It's time to do electronic calibration. Before we did mechanical calibration, now let's do electronic calibration. Let's now create a layout. Now we go into wall app application. The device is activated, Masterbox activated, and the laptop and Masterbox and devices are in the same network. So we can go to wall application. This is the screenshot of wall application, how it looks like. Wall application, as I said, we just recently, like 1 or 2 weeks ago, we had a release. So make sure you have the latest version. The latest version for wall app is 1.2.3. 0.0. So make sure that you have this version, because the previous version had some, I don't want to say bugs, but some shortcomings, right? And now the new release is, let's say, even more user-friendly from interface point of view. Okay, in order to use the application, we need to have laptop with Windows 10, right? And we need to have account on platform.kinoma.com, because we need to log into the application first. In order to log into the application, you need to have internet on your laptop. So for email, we are using the same email as registered on the cloud platform in your account, and the password the same as you are using to log into platform.kinoma.com. So here we press fill on the fields and press login. You will see the second stage in wall application would be to go to devices tab and check in devices tab. You will see empty. You won't see anything. So in devices tab, just press scan all networks. The application will start scanning all networks. By all networks, it means that if you have, for example, Ethernet connection and Wi-Fi connection on your laptop, it means two networks, the application will start scanning both of them. Remember the story about sync up? With a sync up, you need to disable one of the adapters, whether Wi-Fi or Ethernet. But with wall application, it's really comfortable, because it scans both active networks. And if you have even more, it scans all of them. So if the devices and the Masterbox are in the same network with the computer, you will see them in the list, and their statuses will be online. If the device losing a Wi-Fi connection with the router, the status will be offline. There are also other statuses. We will talk about them in troubleshooting section. But now let's just have this perfect situation when we have all devices online. So we make sure on this tab also you can switch on/off calibration screen. The screen is used for electronic calibration. You can switch between CMS and player mode. Player mode is used when the devices are used as a part of HYPERVSN Wall, and CMS mode is used when you want to use the device through the platform, when you're creating the campaign on the platform and sending the file through the cloud, through the internet. But player mode for the devices to be used in the HYPERVSN Wall. Remember, if the device is in player mode, you won't be able to send any commands through the platform.kinoma.com. So what else? You can see IP addresses of the devices, serial numbers of the devices. You can see which mode the device is in. You can see the gear button at the end of the line. If you click the gear button, you will be directed to the interface, to the calibration of the calibration page of the device. And even remember, before you can access the calibration page of the device only when the device is in setup mode and you are connected to its hotspot. But now you can access the calibration page of the device, of the HYPERVSN device, even when the device is in operating mode and connected to the same network as your computer. Amazing, right? So when you click gear button, you will be directed to the calibration page of the device. Let's move on. We make sure the device is online, Masterbox is online. Now let's create layout. This is a constituent part of the HYPERVSN white wall creation. This is really important to create layout in Wall app. Without layout, you won't have synchronization. Without layout, of course, you are able to upload the content through SD card, like in old days when you send the file to support team, we cut it to pieces, send it to you by link, and you can upload it through SD card. But without layouts, you won't achieve synchronization. So this is a constituent part of the step of the HYPERVSN white wall installation. So in order to create layout, we go to Walls tab and click Create Layout. Here you will see the empty fields. You will need to fill in the fields. It's quite user-friendly because every field has its title. You can select the configuration, how many devices you have in a row, how many devices you have in line. Then with the slider on-off slider, with the slider you can define whether the first device whether it will be on short mount or on a long mount. Then there are 3 fields, amazing fields. They are defining height, distance to the viewer, and offset. So I will show you now the screenshot which describes more this kind of 3 fields. The other fields are quite clear, right? You just need to fill them in. But these 3 fields here, have a look. So the height field, it means the height from the floor until the tip of the ray. The distance means L means the distance from the wall to the viewer, and offset means for example, if the main viewing angle is in the middle of the wall, then the offset will be equal to 0. But if the audience, if the main viewing angle will be on, for example, on the left side or on the right side, or if it's on the left side, then you need to use the figure with a minus. If it's on the right side, then just use the positive without the plus mark, just use the positive number. So this is what offset means. It's important because, as you know, these parameters define the correct masks application, shadowing masks on the media files. I will try to explain you a little bit later when it comes for content uploading. So let's move on. We filled in these fields. We created our skeleton. Yeah. It's just a skeleton without the skin. Now let's make it live. Once the skeleton is ready, once the layout is ready, now we need to, you will see, according to the layout you have, here we have 3x3 layout, you will see round shapes. So you will need to define serial number for each round shape. Thus, the application will know the correct positioning of the device. The application will know that the first device has this serial number, the second device has this serial number. So describing the interface. On the column, you will see the devices which are activated under your account and whether the device is online or offline. On the more right part, you will see these round shapes. So what you will need to do, you need to click on the device serial number and then select the shape you want to assign the device to. This is how it works. And in the Masterbox field, we select the serial number of the Masterbox. Then we click Save, and we have in the list of walls, we have created our wall. Now, this is the step of layout creation. This is how we created our layout. And you know what happens in hardware when the layout is created? The Masterbox now understands which devices are in his disposition, which devices are in his memory in the Masterbox. The Masterbox will send appropriate signal now to the devices in his management. And you will notice when the layout is created, if you go back to the interface of the Masterbox, and go to Devices tab, you will see the list of devices. In Controls tab, you will see the list of devices which are connected to the Masterbox. And you can control it even through the web interface of the Masterbox. But in which regard? You can turn on diagnostic mode. You can calibrate the device through the web interface of Masterbox. Also, you can see the information about the device. If the device has any problems, you can see which kind of error it has. So it's really important to understand that you will see the list of devices in the web interface of the Masterbox only when you create a layout in Wall. And also, the Masterbox only after layout creation will send the proper signal to the devices. The indicator for correct connection and correct layout creation is the blue LED on the starter. If you see that the blue LED on the starter is blinking, it means that the device is fine. Now the device gets its signal and it can be used further for content uploading and synchronization. So we done it, layout created. Now let's put some pictures, media files. So Wall, as any other application from HYPERVSN, communicates with cloud, right? So first we will need to upload some content. We go to cloud section, and in the cloud section you will see a list of media files which you have under your account on the platform.kinomo.com. Here it's important to select the layout which you've just created. For example, if you created 3x2 layout, you will see it in the wall field here on this screenshot. You can see a little field, select wall. So you will select your wall 3x2, and then it's why it is really important to select the correct type of the wall, because at this step, when you start downloading from the cloud to local library, the application needs to understand which wall you are downloading it to. The application not only downloading the file, but it's also rendering the file. It's also cutting the file. So if you select a 3x2 wall, then the application will cut automatically the file to 6 pieces, right? If you created 5x2 layout, let's say 10 devices, right? Then the application will cut the file to 10 pieces, correct? So it's important to understand that at this stage, the application is not only downloading the files from the cloud, but also rendering it and cutting. That's why it might take some time for processing. So here you select your wall and you click download button on this section. The downloading will start, and the files, once the files have been downloaded, they will get into local library. A local library, you can define the location of local library on your computer. So the files which are downloaded from the cloud and cut, they will be stored on your computer. And they are visible in the local library now of the application. Now let's get back to my wall, to the wall you've just created. Click on it. You will see Create Playlist section. Click on Create Playlist, and again, you will be directed to the section which files you can add to the playlist. So you just need to add the files you want to the playlist. And finally, you will be available to upload the files via Wi-Fi or upload via SD card. So if you don't have stable Wi-Fi connection between the devices and the router, you can click upload via SD card, and then the application will prepare playlists automatically together with the media files. And you just need to copy the media files together with the playlist to the SD card and insert it to the device. But when you click upload via Wi-Fi, the application will send automatically the necessary piece of media file to all your devices. But in this case, you will need to have quite stable connection. So this is how you upload media files. Also, let me tell you about some amazing features of Wall application. In Wall application, you can switch between playlists. You can select other playlists. You can pause playlist, you can start it again. Yeah. So done. Now media files are playing. The Masterbox synchronizing all the devices through wire, what is important. Now we don't need to switch the playlist, right? So let's turn off the laptop. We turn off the laptop. Now let's get rid of router. Let's disconnect router. We don't need them. The devices will be playing together with the Masterbox in synchronization. But this is true only in case you don't want to change the playlist, right? So you don't need the computer and you don't need the wall app to change the playlist. So in this case, you have wall app, you have Masterbox sending the signal to the devices, and they are playing in synchronization. So this is what is the quite big advantage of wired wall, right? But we don't recommend to get rid of router, right? Because maybe during the event hours you will need to access the wall application again, or access the devices or Masterbox. So better to leave it there. But my recommendations here would be, when you have everything ready, when you don't need to upload content anymore and the content is playing on the devices. So go to router settings and disable Wi-Fi, because there might be interference with devices. Imagine the device is working, it has the wired connection, and it knows the Wi-Fi signal. So it might, from time to time, try to catch the Wi-Fi signal and might interfere the synchronization. So better you disable Wi-Fi function on the router, and the devices will have only single source for synchronization. So this is it. Troubleshooting section. Sometimes you will need to update the firmware of the devices. Please check with the support team, send the serial numbers of the devices to support team, so we check whether you have up-to-date version of the firmware and send you appropriate link. After that, when you receive the link, you need just to download it, unzip, and copy to SD card. This screenshot shows how the updates folder should be copied correctly to the SD card. As you can see, it should be copied to the root folder, to the root directory of the micro SD card. But our team is working on the possibility to update the firmware of the devices through the cloud, through the internet. And it will be really more convenient than updating through micro SD card, right? But at the moment, please don't press any firmware update buttons on the cloud in the devices list. We will let you know when it is ready, and you can start updating your devices through the button on the cloud. As I mentioned, even this is a wired wall, right? You will need to have internet and Wi-Fi at some point of time. So let me repeat them again. You will need Wi-Fi and internet for the activation. For the activation of Masterbox, you will need to have internet on the router. For the activation of the devices, you will need to have stable Wi-Fi and also internet connection. For uploading content from wall app to the devices, you will need, and to the Masterbox, you will need, for the devices, you will need to have stable Wi-Fi. You don't need to have Wi-Fi on the router, but you need to have internet access on your laptop. Yeah, and in order to provide stable stability to Wi-Fi, there are some tricks and hints. You can analyze the Wi-Fi channels and define which channel is less congested. Then go to the settings of the router and select such channel. Also, if you are using, I'm not sure about other brands of routers, I think it's also possible, but in Microtic router, you can change the settings of power capacity of antenna, of Wi-Fi antenna. Also, you can change other fields which will provide more stability on the connection. one of the tricks is, one of the hints would be to check the raise of the devices, to spin the devices just with your hands in the wall before turning the wall on. Nobody knows what happened to the wall during the night, for example, and better when you turn it on again the next day, better to check it manually whether the rays are fine and the clearance is enough for the safety. So some tips and tricks regarding the HYPERVSN wall. It's not solely connected to wired wall, but a wireless wall as well. Just some general tips. So remember about big holes in the backing wall for the putting the plug inside behind the wall. So these big holes can be covered with the stickers just to make your installation nicer. Always remember to protect your wall from the audience. Protect it by the stanchions, and if you are using safety stanchions, don't forget to print out the message to the audience. Don't touch it. Yeah, so it's really difficult to mention all the important information in the webinar, in one webinar. So please make sure to read manuals and guides which we have available on the dashboard of the platform, and also you can check with the support team any questions regarding the installation, regarding everything which is relates to technical questions. So here it's the email address of support@hypervsn.com. Please if you have technically related questions, please check with us.